Ukrayna NATO'ya üyeliği hak ediyor. Her zaman ısrarla savunduğum bir hususu huzurlarınızda bir vesileyle tekrar vurgulamak istiyorum.
This is my video update from Larnaca, Cyprus on this Sunday morning, July the 9th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the big news story that happened yesterday afternoon, which was the release of the 5 Azovstal NAZI commanders who were being held in Turkey under house arrest in accordance with a deal that Putin made with Erdogan and with Elensky when the whole Mariupol Azovstal thing was going down. And the deal was that these 5 guys would be in Turkey in house arrest until the conflict was over. That was the deal that Turkey made. That was the deal that Elensky made when these guys were captured by the Russians in the Azovstal, and that was the agreement they came up with. And yesterday afternoon, Turkey and Ukraine, they broke that agreement, and Erdogan released the 5 commanders to Elensky, and it was a huge PR win for Elensky. He brought those commanders to Lviv, and there was a big ceremony, and it was just a huge PR event and a huge win, a huge PR media win for Elensky. And you know, when I did my video yesterday, I talked about the Elensky-Erdogan meeting, which was taking place, and outside of Erdogan's comment, where he said that Ukraine should have the opportunity to join NATO, outside of that comment, there was really not much else that was agreed upon during this meeting between Elensky and Erdogan. It was a pretty uneventful meeting, at least in the morning yesterday when I was talking about it. Okay, a lot of people talked about how Erdogan said that Ukraine should be allowed to enter NATO. Yeah, big deal. Every NATO member country is going to make some sort of comment along those lines. Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO, or Ukraine can join NATO after the conflict, or Ukraine should join NATO in a year's time, whatever. They're all going to make these types of comments, so I wasn't really too concerned with Erdogan saying that. If that was the concession that Erdogan had to make to the U.S. ahead of the NATO meeting to show his support for Ukraine by saying they should be allowed to enter NATO, so be it if that was the concession. But as the day went along, things took a strange turn, and Erdogan and Turkey, they decided to release these commanders. And I think the big question is, why? Why did Erdogan do this? For Elensky, it was a huge win, a huge PR win for Elensky. And you know, for Elensky, it takes off some of the pressure that he's probably feeling from the far-right NAZI elements, which are in his government and in the military. I'm sure they're going to look at this and they're going to say, "Okay, Elensky, you're going to be allowed to survive for another 6 months." You know, these guys that constantly keep Elensky in a bit of panic because he doesn't know what these NAZI forces are going to do to him. Well, I'm sure they're very happy that they've had their commanders released. And these commanders, they actually gave statements to the media, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna enter the conflict. We're gonna go to the front lines right away." Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It looks good for the media, for the optics, for the morale of Elensky and the Ukraine military for them to come out and say, yeah, we're going to head over to the front lines right away. Okay, I think that's expected for them to say that. If I was these guys, if I was one of these commanders, I'd like make a beeline to London or to the U.S. right away, because I don't know. I think the Russians are going to find a way to target these guys and take them out, especially if they go to the front lines. But we'll see. So the big question is, why? Why did Erdogan do this? Ukraine, Elensky, okay. It's expected that he's going to break an agreement and break a deal, especially for a big media PR event. Does this change the conflict in any way? Does this affect the war in any way? No, it's not going to affect the war. It's not going to affect the conflict or the special military operation. It's not going to make a difference there. But for the media, the PR war, this is what's important to Elensky and the collective West, and they got a big W. So for them to break this agreement, no big surprise. But Erdogan, why did he do it? I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. Erdogan did say that he's trying to get Putin to visit Ankara, and he's going to brief Putin on the meeting with Elensky. Okay, Erdogan is trying to keep in touch with Putin. Peskov, he said that the Kremlin was not informed of this decision to release these commanders. Peskov said that Turkey and Ukraine have broken the agreement. That's what the Kremlin said. Both those countries broke the agreement that they made with Russia. And Peskov hinted at the fact that Turkey was under immense pressure to break this agreement and to release these commanders 4 days before the big Vilnius NATO summit. So was Erdogan put under an enormous amount of pressure? Possibly, definitely. Without a doubt, he was being pressured to do this. But, Erdogan's been under pressure before, and he hasn't folded. He's been under pressure for a year and a half by the United States and the collective West, and he hasn't folded, for the most part, to the pressure. So there are people saying that this is about the grain deal and the fact that Russia is considering pulling out of the grain deal because the grain deal is pretty much useless. The grain is not really getting to where it needs to go, and most of it is going to the EU. There is talk that Ukraine actually uses the grain deal to smuggle weapons in through Odessa. Obviously, Ukraine uses the grain deal and the cover that the grain deal provides in this corridor in the Black Sea to attack Crimea with drones and stuff like that. So, this could be about the grain deal and the fact that the grain deal is not working. But for Erdogan, the grain deal makes him a whole bunch of money, gives him control, and it gives him money. So maybe he was upset that Russia is seriously thinking about pulling out of the grain deal. And so this is his message to Putin. I don't know, that's a possibility. It's hard to say why Erdogan did this, but it is characteristic of Erdogan. He does stuff like this. The elections are over. He won. And now I think he's back to the wheeling and dealing Erdogan. And during the elections, he had to take a position where he was neutral to the conflict in Ukraine, and he wasn't going to jeopardize Turkey's partnership with Russia, because that was very popular in Turkey. The fact that Turkey was taking a neutral position and was friendly towards Russia, and so he played that up for the elections. Now that he's won, maybe Erdogan is going to go back to playing off both sides against each other, which is what he's always done. Maybe we're seeing the real Erdogan reappear. You know, Erdogan and Putin are going to probably solve this through dialogue and diplomacy. Probably. That's my hunch. In 2015, he shot down the Russian plane, the Russian jet. And within a year's time, Erdogan was in Moscow begging Putin to be friends again. And it was pretty embarrassing, pretty humbling for Erdogan, but obviously he didn't learn his lesson back then. And if I were to take a guess as to what's going to happen, I would say that sooner or later, Erdogan's going to be traveling to Russia again, begging for Putin to take him back in. That's probably what's going to happen. But who knows? Maybe the U.S. offered Erdogan something that he couldn't refuse. Maybe they threatened him in a way that he couldn't do anything else but release these commanders 4 or 5 days before the NATO summit. Everything is possible here, and it's going to be very difficult to get to the reasons as to why Erdogan broke this agreement. But it is characteristic of Erdogan. He does this stuff. He does stupid stuff like this. And when it comes to money, and maybe the grain deal was threatening his cash stash, maybe he was worried about losing money from a grain deal pullout, he ended up doing something stupid like this. I would say that sooner or later, Erdogan and Putin, they'll find a way to move past this. But this is embarrassing for Putin because it plays up to the narrative that Putin is and the Russian government, they're too trusting of the collective West and even of countries like Turkey, Turkey is a NATO country. This is the recycling fish. It's a pretty cool concept, actually. So, for Putin, once again, Russian president, he trusted a NATO member state. He trusted Turkey. Turkey broke the agreement. The Russian government is too trusting of these countries, and they always get burned. That's going to be the narrative that is going to play out. But all right, Putin has the political capital. He has the approval rating where he'll be able to get past this. But it may provide an opportunity as well. Never forget that Putin is a judo master, and so having Erdogan release these commanders, maybe it's a media hit for Russia, and it doesn't look good for Russia, but maybe it opens up the way for Russia to finally pull out of a really bad grain deal, of which Russia is getting screwed on the grain deal because it allows Ukraine to get weapons in through Odessa, and it allows Ukraine to attack Crimea. So maybe this is their way to finally get out of this grain deal, to put an end to this. And maybe, just maybe, this means that Russia is going to be able to make their moves on Odessa and Snake Island and capture the entirety of the Black Sea. So while Elensky is celebrating this and the collective West is celebrating this, and Erdogan double-crossed Russia and double-crossed Putin and broke the agreement, maybe the Russian government is kind of sitting back and saying, you guys played right into our hands. And now we can pull out of the grain deal. We have nothing to lose. We have no reason to take part in this grain deal. And that opens up the way for us to look towards Odessa and to look towards Snake Island. It wouldn't surprise me. Elensky put out a promo video on Snake Island like 2 days ago, the anniversary of the liberation of Snake Island and Ghost of Kiev and all of these narratives. Anyway, he put out a really slick, like really well produced promo video of the liberation of Snake Island, which falls under the grain deal, right? It's no man's land because it's part of the grain deal corridor. But Elensky made the claim that Ukraine controls Snake Island. So, maybe Elensky's celebration of the liberation of Snake Island and the video promo he made a couple of days ago foreshadows the fact that in the next few months, Russia is going to be controlling the entirety of that coastline of the Black Sea. I think this could be a real possibility. If Russia does pull out of the grain deal because of everything that has just happened, if this really does take place and Russia says, we're out of the grain deal, then I would say that Russia's going to start to make its moves, its moves towards Odessa and controlling the entire Black Sea coast. So that's the news on this Azovstal agreement that Elensky and Erdogan broke. How about this for a prediction, everyone? Turkey is being put under a tremendous amount of pressure from the US and from NATO. And they've done this now with the Azovstal commanders. How about if during the NATO summit, the big surprise is that Turkey finds a way to work out its problems with Sweden, and during the Vilnius summit, Stoltenberg and Biden, they get up on stage and they announce that Sweden's accession into NATO has been approved by Erdogan and Turkey. We've worked out our problems and we're going to allow Sweden to enter Turkey. How about that for a PR media narrative for NATO? I could see that happening as well. I can definitely see that happening. So let's move on now. And what should we talk about? Oh, by the way, Ukraine and Turkey, a couple of more stories from Elensky's trip to Turkey. 2 more stories. They agreed to a deal to produce drones. So Turkey and Ukraine are producing drones now. That's the deal that they signed. They're going to start manufacturing weapons, which is interesting because Elensky made a deal with Slovakia the other day to produce weapons. And it seems like every country he's visiting, he also came up with a deal with Bulgaria for energy as well, to sell I believe some energy power plants or something. I forgot the deal, but the U.S. was going to broker the whole thing, and they were going to provide the money, and Bulgaria was going to sell, I believe, an energy some energy infrastructure or something to Ukraine, or maybe it's the reverse. But anyway, it seems like as Elensky is visiting these countries, he's also making these deals, which to me, they don't seem like real business deals, but it seems like he's making contracts for the military-industrial complex, or he's making contracts for energy firms. And what this is really all about is just, as he's traveling to these NATO member states, they're also cashing in on his visit. That's the way I'm looking at it, because Ukraine making weapons with Slovakia or making weapons with Turkey, manufacturing drones with Turkey. Come on, man. We all know that's not going to happen, but you got to get the money budgeted. You got to get the contracts in place. And I think that's what they're doing. Get all the money earmarked before, all the money budgeted and earmarked before the Ukraine collapse. So you make sure that the military-industrial complex and all the big energy companies, you make sure that they're all taken care of So I found that to be interesting. And also Elensky, he went to meet with the patriarch, the Orthodox patriarch Bartholomew in Constantinople, Istanbul. And he met with Bartholomew, Patriarch Bartholomew of the church, and he prayed with him. He prayed with Bartholomew. And Bartholomew was the guy that met with Pompeo, and he decided to push for the recognition of the heretical Ukraine Orthodox Church. Not the real Ukraine Orthodox Church, the one that is part of the Russian, the Moscow Patriarch. That's the recognized Orthodox Church in Ukraine. But Bartholomew pushed for the split of the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and he recognized this heretical Orthodox Church, and he pushed for its recognition, and he basically split apart the Orthodox believers on the orders of Mike Pompeo. And wouldn't you know it, Elensky goes and meets with Bartholomew while he's in Turkey. It's getting very hard to be a Greek Orthodox believer. It's getting very, very hard, given this Bartholomew patriarch and the things he does. I'll leave it there. I don't want to say any more against the Greek Orthodox Church and Bartholomew, but I thought that was an interesting story. Elensky praying with Bartholomew. So let's get to a Lindsey Graham tweet that he put out, because I want to read you Vivek Ramaswamy's reply to Lindsey Graham. So Lindsey Graham, he, one sec, very dangerous holding these phones as I'm in the water. Very dangerous. I'm playing with fire. Let's see. Lindsey Graham, he put out this tweet ahead of the NATO summit, and this is what Lindsey Graham said. Give me 1 second so I can find it. Here we go. From Lindsey Graham on the 7th of July. I will be working with Republicans and Democrats in the Senate to pass a resolution urging the admission of Ukraine into NATO. The best way to prevent future wars and promote peace is to create security guarantees that make aggressor nations think twice before starting wars. Ukraine NATO membership is vital to the future security of Europe and the world. I believe there is an overwhelming majority of senators supporting this proposition. And boy, did Lindsey Graham get pummeled in the comments to his tweet and the replies to his tweet. I mean, he got pummeled. Cat turd is the first response I'm seeing. Lindsey's never seen a war he's not willing to send your children to while he sits in his neocon ivory tower and gaslights. Tom Elliott replied to Lindsey Graham and said, "This is why everyone hates you." David Giglio said, "How about a resolution taking the U.S. out of NATO instead?" I mean, he got absolutely destroyed by the replies to this tweet. But the reply that I want to read you is from Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running for president on the Republican side of things. And this is what Vivek Ramaswamy said. At Joe Biden needs to man up to his bully friend Zelensky and clearly state that we are dead set opposed to Ukrainian admission to NATO. This should be a hard red line. It's shameful that even Republicans like Lindsey Graham are now pushing for it. Stop marching us to the brink of nuclear war. For all the hand-wringing about the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, on which the U.S. has more than fulfilled its commitments, The neocon Democrat establishment is shockingly silent on James Baker's famous 1990 not 1 inch commitment to Gorbachev that NATO would never extend east of Germany. NATO was created to deter conflict with the USSR, yet NATO has expanded most rapidly after the fall of the USSR and is now worsening the risk of nuclear war with Russia itself. As president, I'll refuse to be bullied by anti-democratic comedian turned leader, and it's truly mystifying to me that the rest of the West is eating out of this Pied Piper's hand every day. I love it. Vivek Ramaswamy, you are the man. That was an amazing reply to Lindsey Graham. It's truly mystifying to me that the rest of the West is eating out of this Pied Piper's hand every day. I have no comment. I have no comment to that tweet from Ramaswamy. So let's start talking about clown worlds. We have some clown worlds that we need to get to, and the first clown world was sent to me from the great Robert Barnes, who you can follow on his great Locals channel. I'll put a link to that down below in the description box. And this was Janet Yellen and her meeting with the Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. And as Yellen greeted the Chinese Vice Premier, she bowed to the Chinese Vice Premier 3 times. And the Chinese official was like taken back at Janet Yellen's bowing. He's like, we don't do this when we greet someone on a state level. You don't need to bow to me 3 times. And he even, as he was shaking Yellen's hand and Yellen was bowing like 3 times, you could even see the Chinese Vice Premier step back, like kind of like, what is this insane person doing? What is she doing? What is wrong with Janet Yellen? And there are actual reports claiming that Yellen even messed up He Lifeng's name. She actually called him, I believe she called him Hugh Lifeng. And I'm probably messing up his name as well, but I'm not visiting China on an official state visit, so, and I would never bow. I would never bow as I was greeting a Chinese official, that's for sure. So anyway, that's the first clown world with Janet Yellen once again messing things up as she's meeting with Chinese officials. And the next clown world has to do with a video that is on the interwebs now, even though this report from CNN was filmed on, I believe, July 1st or July 2nd. We're now starting to get this video released to us now. And this video has Aaron Burnett of CNN in Ukraine speaking with the people that allegedly were involved in shooting down and capturing a Russian hypersonic Kinzhal missile. And Aaron Burnett is like talking to these guys, and they're showing her the Kinzhal missile, and they're showing her the whole of the Kinzhal missile, and they're saying, here it is, here's the Russian hypersonic missile. Look at this Russian hypersonic missile that we happened to shoot down and to capture. And of course, the missile is in one piece, except for just a little hole on the side. and I think this was the Kinzhal missile that was shot down by the Patriots. Was it shot down by the Patriot system? And Aaron Burnett's like, yeah, wow, that's amazing. This is a real game changer. We can now shoot down, and not only shoot down, but capture Russian hypersonic missiles, and we can capture them, and they're completely intact as well. Oh boy, it does remind me of the Syria sniffing the backpack report that CNN did when they were trying to push the Assad gas narrative, and CNN reporter was sniffing the backpack saying, oh yeah, this smells like deadly lethal gas. It's all over this backpack. Let me get another whiff of this backpack. Let me inhale this lethal gas. and it's CNN just using the same propaganda tricks. Oh yeah, that's a hypersonic missile. Oh, wow, look at it. It's in one piece, completely intact. Good job, guys, on capturing a hypersonic missile. Obviously, it's not a Kinzhal hypersonic missile, but the propaganda is off the charts. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odysee, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. And go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Pick up a Duran hat. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care.